Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, imagine being so miserable politically that you can't even root for the USA in the Olympics. I've got an unbelievable article from the Huffington Post coming up right after this. And a good Tuesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand in your favorite podcast app by visiting the website, nickcraig.com, or searching for the Nick Craig Show. Our program this morning is brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. Melissa Gott and her team, they've got your back. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. Over the last, two and a half weeks or so, there's been a lot of Olympics coverage on television. You've seen it on social media. Comes every 2 years, the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics. Very popular stuff. And it is a event. It is a time of the year in which individuals from the countries that they live, the countries in which they are residing or residents, are rooting for their country. And you, of course, got the gold medal count, all of the fun activities associated with the Olympics. And for the first time in 46 years, the United States men's hockey team went for gold and was successful in doing that. In a 3-on-3 overtime period, the United States men's team, led by Jack Hughes of the New Jersey Devils, scored a goal and beat Canada in the gold medal Olympic game, the first time since the 1980 Olympics back in Lake Placid. The U.S. women's hockey team also beat Canada in overtime to win the gold as well. It was a very good year for America at the Olympics. And so you've got this national pride, this national interest in what's going on. And there are groups of individuals in this country, in the United States of America, on the left, that are so miserable as human beings. They are so politically bankrupt as individuals that they can't even support the United States in the Olympics because of Donald Trump. These individuals are so deranged. These individuals are so mentally ill that they cannot put past what is a 4-year presidential term, and they are actively rooting against the United States. That is the modern Democrat Party. That is the modern left. And I say this kind of as a joke and in passing some time to friends. I can't imagine being a Democrat. And it's not because I think their policies are stupid, which they are. And it's not because I think their ideas are stupid, which they are. It's they're just miserable. They're absolutely miserable people. Every day they wake up, Donald Trump is still the president of the United States. Republicans still control Congress. And they wake up and they're miserable all freaking day. They're just sad, they're upset, they're crying, they have to go to talk to their therapist about Donald Trump and how evil and awful terrible the Republicans are. It's got to be a terrible position to be in. Now, let's be clear. For many on the right, we just went through 4 years of the Biden administration. And while I wasn't happy with what the administration was doing, my life wasn't miserable because of it. I hung out with my friends, went to the beach, went downtown to here in Wilmington, enjoyed all of the great bars and restaurants, lived my life, had a lot of fun, didn't enjoy the policies, didn't enjoy the politics. And by the way, I'm somebody, unlike many of these deranged nutjobs we're about to hear from, I work in politics. I talked about the Biden administration every day. So I would have had an excuse, if I'm being honest, to be miserable. But I was not. Yes, politics are important. Case in point, I do this show every morning. I do a radio show at 5 o'clock every morning. I'm very invested and involved in the process. But it doesn't ruin my life. And I would contend to you, anybody, whether you're right or left, it should not ruin and control your life. It just shouldn't. And unfortunately, for many of those on the political left, their ideology, their political beliefs, their political opinions are a religion to them. And because of that, it is all-consuming. It is all they think about, all they do, all they eat, breathe, and sleep every single day. And I would imagine that has got to be absolutely exhausting and incredibly taxing. So I've got a great article for you this morning over at the Huffington Puffington Post. Here's the headline by the great author Monica Torres, who has her Twitter account blocked so you can't look at anything she posts. Surprise, surprise. Here's the headline. There's a name for the discomfort you're feeling watching the Olympics right now, with the subheadline. If waving the American flag or chanting USA turns you off right now, you're not alone. Written by the great Monica Torres back on February the 21st. So let's go through it. Let's figure out what is going on here with this great insight from Monica Torres. It starts off. While President Donald Trump's deportation agenda separates families and federal agents detain 5-year-olds and kill unarmed civilians, American athletes are winning medals on behalf of the nation at the Olympics right now. This whiplash between pride for the United States competitors and national shame for the federal government is common. I don't think it's common. I think you've got a little enclave of miserable people on the left that feel this way, but I don't know that it is common. Having watched many of these Olympic Games over the last 2.5 weeks, some in public, some at home, I can't say that this is a common feeling. Even U.S. Olympians competing in the 2026 Milan Games in Italy felt ambivalent about representing the stars and stripes. And so they go through an example. U.S. Olympic Hunter Hess said, "There's obviously a lot going on, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. Wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything going on in the United States," which is a fair statement to make. Of course, it's of course got to be political for those on the left because, as I just laid out, it's all consuming. It's all encompassing for them. Everything is politics, and they cannot break away from it for even 15 or 20 minutes and just move on from it. They have to. It has to be everything that they do consistently. The article goes on to say, the cognitive dissonance of rooting for the United States while hating the U.S. government is so common that it, quote, continues to be one of the main topics I hold space for in therapy, said Los Angeles-based licensed clinical worker Amy Monacero. So it's so common in Los Angeles, surprise, surprise, with all the wacko leftist morons over there, that you've got this LA-based licensed clinical social worker that says she's holding space for it in therapy. As we continue to witness national and global atrocities in real time, it can trigger feelings of guilt, despair, shame, and anger. Anger, ladies and gentlemen. According to a Nevada-based clinical psychologist known as Tanisha Ranger, although these feelings are common, you shouldn't ignore them. She told the Huffington Post, cognitive dissonance isn't just having mixed feelings. It's a psychological state that happens when someone holds two conflicting beliefs or values at the same time, or they are engaging in behaviors that contradict their values. She went on to say, our brains don't like inconsistency. Well, maybe that explains why Democrats are so miserable as people. Everything that they believe, everything that they think is incredibly inconsistent. So it searches for ways to reduce that tension, oftentimes not in the healthiest of ways. I found that to be a pretty insightful little sentence there from this Nevada-based clinical psychologist. Our brains don't like inconsistency. I mean, but that's literally all of the Democrats' ideas and wishes. They're all incredibly inconsistent, right? You need 17 forms of ID to shovel snow for New York City, but you don't need an ID to vote. I would argue that there's some pretty strong inconsistencies there. Would you? Talked about that at the end of yesterday's show. I would say there's some pretty high level of inconsistency on that. But okay, let's move on. The next subheadline. Watch out for how this tension shows up in your body and mind. In your mind, this tension might show up as an internal war of words. You might worry, according to Ranger, why do I want them to win when I'm angry about what this country is doing? Or you might quantify your feelings with statements like, I'm rooting for them, but you might even need to turn the game off right after a big moment because it suddenly feels all too complicated to keep rooting. These people are mentally deranged, ladies and gentlemen. Your political agenda and ideology has consumed so much of your life that you can't sit in front of a television for 2 hours Sunday morning and watch the United States battle Canada, their arch rival in hockey, on national television without turning off the game in big moments because it is too complicated for you to keep rooting. How is it too complicated? What is the complicating factor here? That you despise Donald Trump so much that you can't root for U.S. citizens representing the country on the national stage? The hell's wrong with you? Seriously, what is wrong with you? Ranger went on to say it is typical for people with cognitive dissonance to often feel a, quote, weird mix of excitement and discomfort at the same time that might feel like a tightening in your chest or stomach when you realize you're cheering and cringing simultaneously. Sounds like a serious health condition at this point. This cognitive dissonance can also cause physical symptoms too, like tightness in the neck, shoulder or jaw areas, as well as digestive issues and trouble sleeping, according to the LA-based clinical worker. So you can't sleep. Your GI tract is all screwed up. You have immense pain in your shoulders and neck. Your jaw hurts. All of this because you guys lost the presidential election back in November of 2024. Again, not trying to make this all about me, but I sat through 4 years of the Biden administration and I hated almost every single moment of it. I can't say that I was dealing with, I didn't have trouble sleeping. I didn't have digestive issues. My neck and shoulders weren't tight. My jaw wasn't hurting. Yeah, it sucked, but like, so what? Like you get over it. You move on. That's life. Leslie's commenting in our chat and says, TDS is apparently a real diagnosis. I would say so, Leslie. Phenomenal point. The degree to which you feel shame and guilt right now for cheering for the U.S. Olympians might also depend on how much cognitive dissonance you have between the stated values of being American, freedom, revolutionary spirit, opportunity for all, versus how government has actually acted in the hundreds of years since the United States was formed, said a psychologist and executive coach, Lauren Apayo. That's why some people might not experience cognitive dissonance at all, because what the U.S. government is doing to its citizens right now is not new for them. For these people, quote, they have already been exposed to the difference between what America claims to be versus what it is. Which actually I found to be an interesting kind of synopsis in this. Because you hear many on the left continue their bitching and complaining about the Trump administration and Donald Trump, yet you're hearing from this psychologist, doesn't say where she's from, I would assume some wacko leftist city or state, that all of this has been going on for hundreds of years, right? And this is we live on stolen land people. I guess for them, they shouldn't be really mortified with what's going on at all, because whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump in the Oval Office, the United States continues to be, to them, the most unjust, unfair, evil society that has ever existed. And they're not satisfied with either party, and they're kind of fall into the category with many of those on the political left. They're just generally miserable people. So the article goes on to say, how to honor your ambivalence while rooting for U.S. Olympians. Okay, this is interesting. There is no easy, tidy resolution to addressing these big feelings. Learning to move through cognitive dissonance means naming these emotions and letting complexity exist. According to Ranger, you can hold more than one truth at a time. You can admire the discipline and sacrifice of the athletes. You can strongly disagree with government policy, and you can feel both pride and disgust without needing to collapse into that one is a correct feeling. With another licensed psychologist saying, don't forget to breathe. We're just all trying to take things one day at a time while navigating too many uncertainties. So Democrats are forgetting to breathe. Whether they're dying of asphyxiation because of this. Things are just moving so quickly and so fast for them that they can't even breathe. Just don't forget, you gotta breathe when you're watching the United States men or women's hockey team duke it out with Canada. You might forget. You might drop dead on the floor of your living room because you forgot to breathe because Republicans are so awful and terrible. Donald Trump sucks, so you might forget to breathe. Okay. One other way to live with this tension, according to the Huffington Post, is to change your actions to align with your beliefs by focusing on the humanity of athletes over medal counts. With Jamie Apayo saying, if waving the American flag or chanting USA makes us feel grossed out or ashamed, we can cheer for individual athletes. We can also learn more about their stories and the stories of athletes from around the world and appreciate all that they have done to get to the height of their sport. That's encouraging. You can also find mutual aid campaigns to join and help educate yourself so you can ease the feeling of dissonance or disconnection. Or follow the lead of Team USA women's hockey player Kelly Panic, who is from the Minneapolis area where immigration and customs enforcement have been detaining Americans while aggressively and sometimes using violent tactics. She criticized the, quote, unnecessary and just horrifying actions of immigration enforcement right after federal agents fatally shot Minnesota resident Alex Purdy. She told NPR at the time, this is the women's hockey player, it is obviously really heavy. While I'm not proud to represent, what I'm most proud to represent is the tens of thousands of people who showed up on some of the coldest days of the year to stand and fight for what they believe in. This is the kind of real world acknowledgement that would serve us all well, therapists said. These Olympians acknowledged the tension, named it, held the complexity without letting it topple them. It's the exact kind of nuance that most people run from, but really need to embrace. They showed that it is absolutely possible to honor and exalt human effort and accomplishments without having to pretend that political context doesn't exist. End the article there from the Huffington Post, written by the great Monica Torres, who published this and then managed to lock her Twitter account because I assume she was getting a lot of very negative comments and backlashes. And I went through and read some of the comments on the Huffington Post website, and not only are there a lot of funny comments just ripping this article and ripping this author for just the incredibly stupid conversation taking place, but then there's people in here that are like, oh yeah, this is absolutely the case. Oh yeah, this is very much what's going on. This is what I'm feeling right now. And I'm ashamed to root for the United States. And so it brings me to kind of the longer conversation and discussion over where the Democrat Party kind of goes from here. We're going to have a shorter program today. I've got a very busy day ahead. The State of the Union is tonight. It doesn't start until 9 p.m. So we're going to do a much shorter program on this Tuesday morning, so I can get all prepped for that. It's going to be a late night here. So I'm obviously very stressed out with what's going on. I also have to go see my psychologist and a therapist and talk to her for about 6 hours today about how how confusing it is to be an American right now, to be excited that the United States men's team absolutely dominated Canada in the Olympic gold medal games for hockey. And I need to go speak to her for multiple hours. That's going to take up a good chunk of my day today, so I can make sure I'm in the right headspace before I watch the evil, awful, terrible orange man speak in front of a joint session of Congress tonight and speak to the American people. So I've got a very busy day. But overall, these people are they're just insane. I mean, there's no other way to describe this. And I'm not using that as kind of the cliche term of like, oh, people I disagree with are crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, I will contend to you that this is absolute insanity. The fact that you can't disconnect yourself from what is going on politically and at the same time have pride for America goes to show you how bankrupt these individuals are and how politics and their political agenda and identity, as I mentioned, have consumed them completely. It is complete, and it has just completely taken them over. It must be, I can't say that I've dealt with it or something I've experienced, but it's got to be so incredibly miserable to be in that position. It's got to be so incredibly miserable to feel that way. And so, yeah, you've had a couple of Olympians, mouth off and make their anti-America comments. And then on the flip side, you had, and I can't play any of the clips because I'm sure the Olympic Committee will flag the video and take it down. But you had Jack Hughes Sunday morning here stateside, Sunday morning time, commenting to NBC immediately after the Olympic win, how proud he is to be an American, how he's, playing this game, wearing this jersey for every single person in America and representing us on the national stage. That's what the Olympics are all about. It's all about national pride. And the fact that Democrats can't see past that, the fact that they have to take their, what I will describe as a wacko, out of touch political ideology and agenda and find some way to morph that around the Olympics is probably a pretty bad spot to be in. It has to be. The fact that you've got licensed, let me make sure I get the title right on this. The fact that you've got a Los Angeles-based licensed clinical social worker who is holding times open in her office and was holding times open in her office during the Olympics so people could come in that wanted to root for U.S. sports at the same time while they, quote, hated the U.S. government, tells you all that you need to know. It tells you the entire story. And I really don't know how the Democrat Party begins the process of rolling this back. It's genuinely not healthy. I think that anybody of sane mind could tell you very clearly that this is not a healthy mindset. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be some sort of clinical psychologist or clinical therapist, but I feel like I've got a strong enough touch to reality that I can tell you it is not good for you as an individual that you have so much pent-up animosity and hatred for a country that you are having and fighting a vicious mental health battle over whether you should or should not vote or root rather for the United States of America at the Olympics. And I even saw individuals on social media over the last 2 weeks, not only were they not rooting for the United States, they were actively rooting against the United States. They were rooting for any country that was playing the United States in whatever, whether we're talking about long jumping, cross country skiing, curling, bobsled, whatever. It didn't matter what the sport was. They were actively rooting for other countries. I mean, I saw people rooting for the Chinese women curling team over the U.S. team, and it's just like it just goes to show you the lack of ability for these individuals to deal with any sort of issues whatsoever. I mean, these are the same groups of individuals that over the last couple of years are chanting LGBTQ for Palestine and things like that. A religion and a group of individuals that actively murder and kill people that are gay, yet they're running around college campuses, free Palestine, gays for Palestine. I mean, it's just, these people are clueless. They're so uninformed with what's going on. They're so insulated as to what is happening across the globe. And I'm not sitting here pretending to be some sort of foreign relation expert, but you can't in any sort of right mind be of the mindset that holding a sign up that says LGBTQ for Palestine is a logical statement at all. Gays for Palestine. That doesn't make any sense. If you knew anything about the group that you're talking about, you would know how idiotic, dumb, and stupid that would be. You would know that. if you had any sort of knowledge or information outside of your little bubble, your little echo chamber here in the United States. And so I bring this up, A, because I think the story is hilarious and I wanted to bring it to your attention. And B, this is a growing trend within the Democrat Party, I believe. I can't say for certain how large this group is growing or what level of influence they're taking over, but I feel like I can say pretty confidently to you this morning that this is a growing trend on the left of individuals that are so all in on their political agenda. And let's be clear about this. Many of you, and myself included, we are hardcore political people. We have very strong beliefs, very strong opinions about things politically. That is not the criticism. That is not the issue at hand. It is the lack of ability to disconnect from that. I am a tried and true conservative all throughout. I have very conservative opinions, ideology, thoughts, use whatever you'd like to use to describe it. I don't let that control every single facet of my life. I can go out and enjoy things. Now, it's unfortunately 30 degrees here in Wilmington right now, but not before long. We'll be talking about temperatures in the 80s and 90s. I'm going to go out. I'm going to enjoy the beach. I'm going to enjoy weekends with my friends. And I'm not going to be worrying the whole time that terrible atrocities are happening at the hands of the U.S. or federal government. It's just stupid. It's ridiculous. But that's where these individuals are. It's insane. It is verifiably insane. And it is, I would argue, detrimental to the Democrat Party moving forward because of articles like this that get written. Because any sane, rational, normal person stumbles across this article over at the Huffington Post and goes, what the hell is wrong with these people? Why is it that they can't root for U.S. citizens representing the United States of America on the national stage? Where did they turn off the road? Where did they go wrong that has led them down this path to where they are right now? This is not a popular thing. This is not a large group of individuals. I'm sure if you go over to Blue Sky, which is where all of the liberals have run because God forbid they're challenged on any of their ideas. I'm sure if you go over to Blue Sky, you would have seen a bunch of comments about this over the weekend and over the last couple of weeks about the U.S. But let's not pretend that that's a large crowd of individuals. That is your very, very progressive radical left that has those feelings, that has those opinions. The opinions are not only incredibly stupid, I think they're dangerous for the Democrat Party moving forward. Right? When you look at the wide spectrum that is politics, most individuals, even those that disagree with Donald Trump, and plenty of those individuals will be up late tonight as the president makes his State of the Union around 9 p.m. They don't like Trump. They're not a fan of Trump. They're not of the mindset. They don't fall into this category of individuals who spent their Sunday morning actively rooting against the United States over Canada. I mean, they just do not fit that bill. And it's just, it is remarkable to figure out how you get into that mindset. Now, here's, of course, the disclaimer. Has the United States done bad things in the past? Sure. So has every other country. But because of those things, you hate and despise America? Fine. And I will make this argument, as you've heard many others on the right make. Go somewhere else. I'm not saying I want you kicked out of the country. That's not my point. But if you have so much hatred, so much animosity, and you despise the United States of America and the stolen land that we live on, as we heard from one of those, whoever it was at the one of the award shows back a couple of weeks ago, all of this stolen land and so on and so forth, I would just make the point, then just find somewhere else to live. Find a country that isn't terrible. Find a country that isn't so awful and move there. Apply for citizenship. Start with a visa and go live there. I mean, we've seen a bunch of celebrities go overseas, and they're all coming back to the United States. Why? Because the United States is the best country that has ever existed. Because all of these countries throughout Europe that they pretend are the most amazing places in the world are hellholes. Many of them. They have completely been overrun and taken over, and they're disasters. They're unsafe. It's a miserable place to be, many of these places. I mean, Christ, look at what's going down in Mexico right now. Talked about it a little bit yesterday morning. You've got cartels actively killing people and killing National Guard members in the streets of Mexican cities right now. That's your idea? That's your idea of a utopia? That's your idea of a better place to live, a better place to be? Give me a freaking break. That doesn't mean that the United States is perfect. That doesn't mean that we're not without our flaws. But this anti-American rhetoric from those on the political left is a very stupid and politically damaging tack going forward. And you see it all the time. You see it even during campaigns where there's not an American flag to be seen during a major Democrat political rally. Just an oversight that there's not an American flag in the room. It's a very there's a very small group of individuals that believe that that is a good thing. The vast majority of people are proud to be Americans. They really are. Now, that doesn't mean that they agree with everything that America does. Let's be clear. During the Biden administration, I wasn't ashamed to be an American. I was frustrated with what was going on. I thought that Joe Biden was making America look like a fool on the national stage, but I wasn't disgusted to be in this country. I wasn't disgusted to have had the pleasure of being born in America. I didn't hate our country. That's where people are on the left right now. They're obviously losing their minds. They're having to go see therapists, psychiatrists, shrinks, licensed clinical social workers to discuss this pain and trauma that they're dealing with. It's nuts. It's not healthy, and it's a very unpopular opinion for the Democrat Party to hold. And so we'll see what happens tonight during the State of the Union. There is a rumor that, or not rumor, it has been discussed that the U.S. men's hockey team was invited to attend the State of the Union. They had to fly back into Miami. They were originally supposed to fly into New York, but because of the major snowstorm affecting that area of the country over the last couple of days, moved them down to Miami. So we'll see if they are in attendance tonight. We'll see if they get a standing ovation, right? Well, we see plenty of times during the State of the Union when, and it's the case with, tends to be with both parties for political issues, but the Democrat Party has made a trend recently where, they won't stand for kids with cancer. They won't do any of that because they're being introduced by Donald Trump. So will Democrat members, who will probably all be wearing white in solidarity with the destruction of the United States, will they stand for the U.S. men's hockey team or the U.S. women's hockey team that won gold at the Olympics? I don't know. We'll see. My guess is probably not. I will also be putting out a bingo card for tonight as well, so you can watch and play along with the Olympic, with the State of the Union. I've got some great things on the card there, including blaming Joe Biden, a Democrat getting ejected, the president slamming members of the United States Supreme Court, the references to UFO files, Greenland acquisition joke. I'll put that up on my social media here in a couple of hours. You can follow me over on X and Facebook at Nicholas M. Craig and play along with that tonight. I'll also put it up on the Nick Craig Show Facebook page as well, and I'll throw it in a Patreon as well. So hopefully you'll be looking forward to that. I will not be live for the State of the Union tonight. I'm going to go through and pull all of the pertinent clips and information as the president is set to spend a vast majority of his commentary tonight dealing with the economy, trying to sell his economic agenda and economic package to the American people. I'll be watching that in its entirety. We will have a full rundown of that coming up for you tomorrow morning right here on the Nick Craig Show. Before we get out of here on this short edition this morning, I want to thank the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support as we are now well past the 1-year mark of the Nick Craig Show. It is not possible without your support over on Patreon and without our great advertiser, Melissa Gott, and her team over at the Law Group. And I want to remind you that when legal challenges arise, put your trust in the Law Group. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of our state. Regardless of the legal issue you're facing, a divorce, real estate transaction, a strong criminal defense, whatever it is, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures that your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. They're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call, 910-251-6088, or online, lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. Well, that's going to do it for a Tuesday edition. Busy night. We'll have a full recap of the State of the Union coming up tomorrow morning as the Nick Craig Show streams live weekday morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and is available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app. Have a great rest of your day. We're back here tomorrow morning on the Nick Craig Show.